here's Captain K. Ahoy landlubbers and welcome to a Factorio tutorial. This tutorial is about oil trains and about the oil loading and unloading in barrels. So the train arrives, it's unloading the filled barrel, it's loading up the empty barrels, and then it's heading out of the station for the refill stations. Now the idea is that while the train is on the tracks, all the stations have time to fill or empty the barrels, and when the train arrives, like here, all he has to do is dump some new empty barrels, fresh empty barrels, and since there are none to pick up, as soon as he's dropped the specified amount, he's heading out of the station. And here he's gonna drop off the filled barrels, picking up the ones that have been emptied, and then he's heading out the station while these ones are being emptied without losing too much time. So in my opinion, a highly efficient system for the oil. And so let's hop out and let's check out how it works. So I've got this decider combinator here. He's checking the contents of those barrels, and as soon as the content hits 40, he's sending an output signal S. Well, I set this to 39 because I have two inserters, and I have fast inserters because the stack inserters aren't precise enough. And also you have to take into account the inserter capacity bonus. That means with each unloading they grab 4, right? So this number needs to be divisible by 4, and then you subtract 1, because that means with the last execution of their movement they hit 40 straight on and then they stop on point. So with those 40 barrels unloaded, this one sends the signal S and he sends it to this decider combinator, which is basically an s-r-latch. S-r stands for set reset, and we can watch it now. As soon as he receives the signal S, he's outputting the signal S to himself, and then he stays locked. That's what's happening now. You see S2 drop down to S1 because we lost the other signal, but it stays locked until he resets. That was the reset, and the reset happens with this arithmetic combinator sending a negative signal of S for the reset. Now before we switch to that, let's see what happens once this latch is locked. So as long as he's outputting a signal S, those inserters stop, because they're only enabled if S is less than 1. That keeps those inserters from unloading more barrels, right? Now the reset condition, so that they start unloading again, is actually 2 conditions that have to match, and that's why I've placed down this decider combinator. That's basically an AND gate. So if R is bigger than 1, so if I have at least 2 signal R's, that's the AND condition, he's outputting the reset signal to the arithmetic combinator. It's a bit hard to see, but that's that wire. And the 2 conditions are, on one hand, I have this decider combinator that checks whether or not the chests are empty. And up here I've placed this rail signal that checks whether or not a train is present, and when there is no train present, it's green, and when it's green, it's outputting the signal R. So if there is no train and the chests are empty, that's our reset condition for that reset latch. So that's that bit. Now to this rail signal, I've only hooked up those 2 stack inserters. They run on the condition R is bigger than 0. That also means that as soon as the train leaves, they start unloading those chests. Now, the reset condition is not only the empty chests, because I want that when they remain full, I want the train to arrive and then head out without refilling this, because that means that when they're not empty, the s-r-latch doesn't reset and they remain blocked. But I want the train to leave anyway, because then they don't have to meet the 40 barrels condition. And that I did with another decider combinator here. So this decider combinator checks on two conditions again. It's another AND gate. We have this decider combinator here that checks whether those chests are empty. That means all of the full barrels have been loaded into the train. And the second condition is the s-r-latch. That means that the s-r-latch needs to be reset. No, the other way around. That the s-r-latch needs to be locked, right? And that's when this one sends the signal G, the go signal, to this station. That means train arrives. He's unloading the barrels. Once the condition is met, this one is locked. And if these are empty, he will head out. If he arrives again and they are not empty because they have piled up here, and that might happen in one of the next runs because our storage tank up here is empty. So if they don't get fully emptied, let's see, maybe that happens now. Yeah, so 10 barrels remain in here. That means the s-r-latch stays locked. So the train will only arrive, pick up the full barrels, and then immediately head out. And this way the system is self-balancing. And right now there is only one condition where we have a deadlock, and that's when they are empty, and the train arrives and he cannot deliver 40 barrels. Well, that basically means that we have to make sure that we always have enough empty barrels in the train, otherwise we have this deadlock situation. We could simply resolve that deadlock situation by placing down a pulse clock, sending a random pulse to that AND gate as well. That means even in that condition, if he stays here for too long, the clock will send a pulse and the train will head out anyway. But I didn't think it's necessary for this here, because just fill up enough empty barrels and you're fine. And the rough number for that is, if we have 40 barrels unloaded here, that means we can in total have 40 barrels in here and 40 filled barrels. That is already 80 barrels. And then we just add a few extras. And we also have to take into account the barrels that are on this belt. I have no idea how many there are, but let's see. Let's collect all of them and count. So yeah, that's 30 barrels. So let's throw in an extra 30 barrels, right? That brings us up to 110. And then throw in, throw in a bit extra. So let's just say 3 times the number of barrels you want to unload here, and you're on the safe side and you should avoid a deadlock, right? Now let's head to the unloading station and see what happens there in detail. Here we arrive, so let's jump out. So he's unloading the barrels, he's loaded up the empty barrels, and he's heading out. So here I had to set up things a bit different. This one here is the decider combinator that checks whether or not all of the barrels have been unloaded, right? This one you can ignore, that's from the smart train loader. That just assures that both chests are filled evenly. That's the smart train loader that you can see my other tutorial. So this decider combinator checks whether all barrels have been unloaded, and then he sends the go pulse to this decider combinator And yeah, this one here, this decider combinator, I hooked up to the belt. That is to check whether or not all the barrels have been unloaded. So here I have stack inserters, they unload as quick as possible. Here I have stack inserters, they place it all on the belts. And you see, as soon as the first barrels come down again, they pass by this transport belt and they send the content to this decider combinator, and that makes the train leave. So this is a lot simpler. I decided to go for this solution because it's very simple and straightforward. Of course, if you have a lot of barrels in here to unload, it might actually be that the first barrels come down here and trigger the train before everything was unloaded, but then you could just place down more stack inserters. Basically, you have to unload this train wagon before the first barrels come down again. But let's count. Now we've got 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th. So you have 6 seconds time, and for everything right now there was more than enough. I had to deal with another problem here, and that was, what if for some reason a train arrives without any barrels, right? Or what happens if he has only so little barrels that there are no barrels coming down from the top again? I'm going to simulate this by running around the belt, right? So let's say you've placed down hundreds of these unloaders, and now you see none of the barrels made it back. But the train left anyway, and that's because of this little pulse clock. So here I have a arithmetic combinator that's counting up. It's feeding it into this decider combinator, and as long as the signal is below 999, he's outputting the input count, and if it's above 1000, he doesn't. That means that this clock is reset. It's counting up. On the right hand you can see 990, and now it reset. Right. So this is a clock that constantly counts up and then resets. And here I have a decider combinator that once this clock reaches 995, a little error margin because of lag issues or whatever, he's outputting a signal G as well, and that's fed into this AND gate. And as you can see, I have 3 wires, so if this condition is true and this or that condition, right? So it's an OR gate at the same time. As soon as 2 conditions are true, this one is sending the pulse. And with that, I made sure that there is never a train parked here. Even if he can't unload anything, he can still pick up the barrels and head out again to deliver those barrels. And yeah, that's it. And actually, I forgot the name, but thanks to the guy that came up with the question how I would solve the problem of a train unloading a certain amount of barrels at the station, because yeah, it's actually a really good idea, it's efficient. So let me show you now how to build one of these step by step. Also, this is the cramped version. What we're gonna do is we're gonna space it out a bit. So first of all, let's lay down a few tracks. Let's place down a station. This one we only need to feed the signal to. And let's place down a rail signal as a start. Now make sure that this rail signal actually, let me connect that up. Make sure that that rail signal is within the reach of the train. So I did the loading and unloading with 2 wagons. You can actually use 1. So if you have the station here, make sure the rail signal is placed somewhere on the line of the train. So now it's hitting the first wagon, so it's a guaranteed hit. Then we're gonna start by placing down the decider combinator, and we need 2 to read the output of our chests. Place them down here. And let's place down 2 chests. Let me do it like that. And I decided to use a pole because that makes the wiring a bit easier. Let's produce some wires. So then we first hook up those chests with that pole, right? Like this. Because we want to read the contents of these chests. Now I used a green wire to connect both. That means that whatever I place in here, this pole is going to read all of the contents. So you know, he's reading the contents of both chests. And that's what we want. We want the total. Then you hook up the information of these wires to both inputs of both decider combinators. And now, quite simply, this one checks whether or not we have enough empty barrels. Let's say we want a total of 100 barrels in here, then we set this to 99. As I said before, this number needs to be dividable by the amount of inserters you have, and you have to take the inserter capacity bonus into account. Right now the bonus is 9, right? That means each inserter can stack 10. So if I use 2 stack inserters here, that would work because 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, right? And here we do the opposite. We check if the chests are empty, and we do so by setting the empty barrels to less than 1. So here the amount we want to have dividable by inserter size minus 1, and here whether or not these chests are empty. This we then run into an s-r-latch, and this one here is our s-r-latch. That means if we have reached the number we want, we send the signal S, and the signal we send to our switch, right? And the switch is set up simply if S is bigger than 0, output the signal S, and then we feed this to the decider itself. That means as soon as this one receives a signal S, he's also outputting a signal S, which means he's receiving a signal S. That means he's locked, right? So that's our s-r-latch. And then we hook up, let's create a few more. And then we hook up this latch to the inserters, like that. Now what we want is, we want them to work only as long as this one isn't set, right? So we set them to S has to be less than 1. We can copy that, shift right click, shift left click, so we've also got it here. So that means as soon as the condition is set, the switch is set, he's outputting a signal S. That means this condition is no longer true. That means they stop. So that's the first part. Now we need to reset all of that. And we do so by placing down the arithmetic combinator. This one is for the reset. And we need another decider combinator, basically to decide when we want to reset this s-r-latch. So the reset goes to the input of the switch, right? And here we decide whether or not we want to trigger this reset, so the output of this decider goes to the input of this decider. Now here we're going to output the reset signal, right? And if this one receives this reset signal, we're going to multiply it by -1. And we're going to output this as the signal S. That means he's going to output -S-1 That means if this one is sending the signal S, he's also receiving a minus S, which results in a S equals 0. And that means that this condition isn't matched anymore, so he won't output the signal anymore, so the whole thing has reset, right? Hope you follow me so far. Now, how do we decide when to reset? We have actually two conditions. One condition is the train signal, and the other condition is the chests. If those chests are empty, we want this desired combinator to send a reset signal. And the other condition is this train signal. And we want to reset when there is no train present. For that, we have to send the green signal to output the reset signal as well. That means if r is bigger than 1, so if we receive more than 1, that's the AND condition, then he shall reset this. So far, so good. Now let's place down two more stack inserters, and these we hook up to that same train signal. Now we want those to unload the chest once the train is gone. That's why we set these to the condition that r is bigger than 0. That's already correct, actually. So if there is a train present, it's outputting red or yellow. And if there is no train present, it's outputting signal R. And that means the enable condition is true. And they start unloading. So that's all of this part. And now all that's left is the condition to make the train leave. And for that, we're going to place down the last two decider combinators. This one is going to be another AND gate, because we want two conditions to be true. One condition is that this s-r-latch is outputting a signal. So if the latch is set, that means the condition is met, that means the train can leave, or that also means that they haven't emptied, that also means that the train can leave, right? So he's outputting a signal S. That means for the AND gate, S needs to be bigger than 1. And then we can output the go signal. And the other condition, I misplaced this one. The other condition would be the unloading of the barrels. So let's place down two more chests, right? Let's assume that they have been unloaded, and then the full barrels go in here. So we need to hook up both of these chests to this desired combinator, and this one is delivering the second condition. Now this one is simply all of the full barrels have to be gone. That means less than 1, right? Then they output the other condition of sending a signal. So if this one is sending a signal and this one is sending a signal, then this one is sending the go signal, and we can use the remaining wire to the station, and this station needs to be set to send to train. Now the last thing that you have to do is when you place down your train, you add the name of the station. What's it called? It's called tutorial. So the condition here is tutorial circuit condition signal G is bigger than 0. Or you can also say signal G is equal to 1, whatever you prefer. And then this train will leave. And yeah, that's basically it. So I hope you did like this tutorial. If you did so, please smack that like button. If you have any other suggestions, questions, anything else you want me to make a tutorial on, let me know in the comment section. If you never want to miss a tutorial, subscribe. This is Captain Concept, and I say goodbye for today, and make sure that whatever you do, that you always have a hand's width of water on your keel. Arr!